I found my granddaughter and her baby living under a bridge in a tent. When she saw me, she broke down crying because she'd been told I died years ago. When I brought them home and revealed the dark truth about her father, she learned how much money he had stolen from her. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me tell you how I got to this moment, standing in the rain under a concrete overpass, staring at my 19-year-old granddaughter Madison, holding a crying baby. 3 days earlier, I'd been living my quiet, retired life in Minneapolis, thinking my son Derek was just being his usual distant self. Turns out, distant was the polite word for what he'd been doing. It started when I got a Facebook message from someone named Crystal Williams. "Mrs. Henderson, I think your granddaughter needs help. She's been asking about you at the shelter." My blood ran cold. Madison was supposed to be in college in California, according to Derek. Last I heard, she was studying nursing and doing great. I messaged Crystal back immediately. "What shelter? Where is Madison?" The response came an hour later with an address downtown and the words, "She has a baby now. Says her dad told her you passed away 2 years ago." That lying snake. Derek had told Madison I was dead while she was pregnant and alone. While she needed her grandmother most, he'd erased me from her life completely. Why would he do such a thing? The answer would come later, and it would shake me to my core. I drove downtown that rainy Thursday morning, my heart pounding. The homeless camp under the freeway was bigger than I'd expected. Tents lined both sides of the concrete supports, and the smell of unwashed bodies and desperation hung in the air like fog. Crystal, a tired-looking woman in her 40s, met me at the edge. "She's the blonde girl in the blue tent," Crystal pointed. "Been here about 6 months. Baby's about 4 months old now. Sweet kid, but she's struggling." I approached the tent slowly, not wanting to startle anyone. "Madison?" I called softly. The tent flap opened, and there she was. My beautiful granddaughter, thin as a rail, holding a tiny baby wrapped in what looked like a dirty towel. Her eyes went wide, then she started shaking. "Grandma," she whispered, "but Dad said, he said you died of cancer. He showed me the obituary." That bastard had actually created a fake obituary. I knelt down in the mud, not caring about my good pants. "Honey, I'm very much alive. Your father lied to you." Madison collapsed into my arms, sobbing. The baby, startled by the noise, began crying too. As I held them both, I made a silent promise. Derek was going to pay for this. But first, I needed to get my granddaughter and her baby somewhere safe. "Pack everything you have," I told her. "You're coming home with me." As we loaded her few possessions into my car, Madison kept touching my arm like she couldn't believe I was real. "Grandma, why would Dad tell me you were dead?" I wish I'd known the answer then. By the time I found out the truth, I understood that Derek's cruelty ran deeper than I'd ever imagined. Getting Madison and baby Emma settled in my house felt like Christmas morning. If Christmas involved discovering your son had committed identity theft against his own daughter. While Madison showered and I fed Emma a bottle, she started telling me what had really happened over the past 2 years. "I got pregnant junior year," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The father wanted nothing to do with us. When I told Dad, he said you would be ashamed of me, that I disappointed the whole family." My heart broke. I would have been nothing but supportive. "What else did he tell you?" "That you were sick and didn't want to be bothered with my problems. Then when Emma was born, he said you'd died and left me nothing in your will because I'd ruined my life." Madison's eyes filled with tears again. "I believed him, Grandma. I was so hurt that you'd rejected me, even in death." The calculated cruelty of it took my breath away. Derek had deliberately isolated his pregnant daughter, made her believe her own grandmother had abandoned her. "Madison, honey, I would have moved heaven and earth to help you. I would have been there for Emma's birth, for everything." That's when she dropped the real bombshell. "Dad said he was getting help from your estate to keep me in school, but the money never came. When I couldn't pay tuition, I got kicked out. That's when everything fell apart. My estate. While I was very much alive. A chill ran down my spine. What kind of help was he supposed to get?" Madison pulled out her phone, scrolling through old messages. "Here, look at this text from Dad last year." She handed me the phone. The message read, "Grandma's estate lawyer said the education fund will release $50,000 for your tuition and living expenses. Should be available next month. Stay focused on school. $50,000 from my non-existent estate. My hands started shaking as the pieces fell into place. Derek wasn't just lying to Madison about my death. He was using my supposed death to steal money. But from where? I spent the next hour making phone calls while Madison napped with Emma. First to my bank, then to my financial advisor, then to my insurance company. What I discovered made me physically sick. Someone had attempted to claim my life insurance policy 6 months ago. The claim was denied because the insurance company couldn't verify my death, but they had a copy of the fraudulent death certificate Derek had submitted. My fake death certificate, complete with forged doctor signatures and falsified medical records. My financial advisor was even more disturbing. Mrs. Henderson, we've had several calls over the past year from someone claiming to be your estate executor. He was asking about liquidating your retirement accounts. We told him he'd need proper documentation, which he never provided. Derek had been systematically trying to steal my entire life savings by pretending I was dead. And when the official channels didn't work, he'd apparently found other ways to get money, all while telling Madison the funds were coming from my estate. But if Madison never got the money, where had it gone? The answer to that question would lead me down a rabbit hole of deception that would change everything I thought I knew about my son. As I watched Madison sleep peacefully for the first time in months, holding her baby close, I realized this was just the beginning. Derek had made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated his mother. Game on, you lying thief. Monday morning, I called Derek's work number. Time to see exactly how deep this hole went. When his secretary put me through, I could practically hear him turn white through the phone. Mom? His voice cracked like a teenager's. We heard that I was dead? I kept my voice pleasant, even sweet. Funny thing about that, Derek. Turns out I'm feeling remarkably spry for a corpse. The silence stretched so long, I wondered if he'd hung up. Finally, I can explain everything. Oh, I'm sure you can. Why don't you come by the house tonight? Bring Laura. We need to have a family meeting. I paused just long enough to let him squirm. Madison will be joining us too. Madison? Now he sounded like he might vomit. Where is she? Safe, fed, clean. You know, all the things a grandmother typically provides when her son abandons his pregnant daughter. Each word was precisely placed, like chess pieces. 7 o'clock sharp, Derek. Don't be late. I hung up before he could respond. Let him spend the day in agony, wondering exactly how much I knew. While Madison took Emma to the pediatrician for a proper checkup, something that should have happened months ago, I got busy. My first call was to Patricia Wells, an attorney I'd known for 20 years. The second was to my insurance company's fraud department. The third was to the Social Security Administration. Patricia arrived at 4, carrying a briefcase that looked like it meant business. Betty, I've reviewed everything you sent me. This is serious fraud we're talking about. Identity theft, insurance fraud, possibly wire fraud if he's moved money across state lines. How serious? I asked, pouring her coffee. Federal prison serious. Multiple felonies. We're not talking about a slap on the wrist here. She pulled out a thick folder. I've prepared some documents. If you want to pursue this legally, we can have him arrested by Thursday. That stopped me cold. Prison? Derek was a lying, thieving snake, but he was still my son. What are my other options? Full restitution, community service, and a restraining order keeping him away from Madison and the baby. But Betty, if you don't prosecute, he'll just do it again, to you or someone else. I thought about Madison's hollow eyes, about baby Emma's malnourished frame, about months of my granddaughter believing her grandmother had rejected her. Let me see how tonight goes first. At exactly 7 o'clock, Derek's BMW pulled into my driveway. Laura stayed in the car. Smart woman. Derek walked to my front door like a man approaching his own execution. When I opened the door, he tried to smile. Mom, you look great. We really thought that you'd gotten away with it? I stepped aside to let him in. Madison, come say hello to your father. Madison emerged from the kitchen, holding Emma. Derek's face went through several interesting color changes as he realized the game was over. Hi, Dad, Madison said quietly. Surprised to see me alive too? Derek opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again like a fish gasping for air. I can explain. Can you? I settled into my favorite chair, the one that gave me the best view of his squirming. Because I'm dying to hear how you explain telling your daughter I was dead while simultaneously trying to steal my life insurance money. That's when Derek made his fatal mistake. Instead of confessing, instead of apologizing, instead of throwing himself on our mercy, he decided to double down. Look, I was trying to protect everyone. Madison was making terrible choices, and you were getting older, more vulnerable. I was trying to simplify things. The sheer audacity of it left me speechless. Madison, however, found her voice. Protect me? You let me live under a bridge with your granddaughter. You made your choice when you got pregnant, Derek snapped, his careful mask finally slipping. I gave you options. That's when I realized my son wasn't just a thief. He was a monster. The man standing in my living room wasn't the son I'd raised. This Derek was cold, calculating, and apparently without a conscience. When he started lecturing Madison about consequences and poor choices, I'd heard enough. Derek, I said quietly, and something in my tone made him stop mid-sentence. Sit down. He sat. Good boy. Even monsters can be trained. I pulled out the folder Patricia had prepared. Let's talk about choices, shall we? You chose to file a fraudulent death certificate with 3 different agencies. You chose to attempt insurance fraud for $200,000. You chose to let your daughter and grandchild live in poverty while you collected money in my name. Derek's face went pale. How did you find out? Oh, Derek, you might be clever, but you're not nearly as smart as you think you are. I opened the folder and began reading. Attempted fraud with Lincoln Insurance Company denied. Attempted fraud with Northwestern Mutual under investigation. Fraudulent Social Security death claim flagged for review. Madison gasped. Dad, you tried to steal Grandma's Social Security? And here's the interesting part, I continued, enjoying the sweat beading on Derek's forehead. While all these legitimate claims were being denied, somehow $85,000 disappeared from accounts I didn't even know existed. Accounts opened in my name using that fake death certificate. That's impossible, Derek stammered. Those accounts what? Derek? I leaned forward. Finish that sentence. He looked trapped, which was exactly where I wanted him. I was trying to preserve your assets for the family. By stealing them? Madison's voice was incredulous. By protecting them from nursing home costs, Derek was grasping now, throwing out any excuse that might stick. Mom's getting older. What if she needs care? What if she's not capable of managing her finances? I started laughing. I couldn't help it. The pure chutzpah of the man was almost admirable. So you decided to steal my money to protect it? How noble. Where's the $85,000? Derek? Madison demanded. Her voice had gotten stronger over the past few days, and I was proud to see her spine returning. Derek looked between us like a cornered animal. It was invested. For the family. For Emma's future. Invested where? I pulled out my phone. Because I have my banker on speed dial, and he's very interested in recovering stolen funds. That's when Derek played his last card, the one I'd been waiting for. You can't prosecute me, Mom. I'm your son. Think about what this would do to the family name, to your reputation. People would say you raised a criminal. I stood up slowly, walked over to where he sat, and looked down at him. At that moment, I saw him clearly for perhaps the first time in his adult life. Derek, I did raise a criminal. The question now is what I'm going to do about it. The silence in the room was deafening. Even baby Emma seemed to sense the gravity of the moment. Here's what's going to happen, I said, returning to my chair. You have 48 hours to return every penny you stole, every single penny. You're going to establish a trust fund for Emma's education with $50,000 on top of what you stole, as compensation for the months of hell you put Madison through. I don't have that kind of money just lying around, Derek protested. Then you'll figure it out. Sell your BMW, take out a loan, rob a bank for all I care. But if that money isn't in my account by Wednesday at 5 p.m., I'm pressing charges. Derek's face hardened. And if I refuse? I smiled, the same smile I'd used when he was 6, and testing boundaries. Then you'll find out just how much your old mother learned about persistence during her 40 years in accounting. As Derek left, slamming the door behind him, Madison turned to me with wide eyes. Grandma, do you really think he'll pay it back? I looked at my granddaughter, This brave young woman who'd survived months of hell because of her father's greed and felt a surge of protective fury that surprised me with its intensity. "Honey, your father is about to learn something he should have figured out years ago. You don't steal from family, and you definitely don't steal from me." Tuesday afternoon, Derek called. I let it go to voicemail. Tuesday evening, he called again. Voicemail. Wednesday morning brought a text. "We need to talk." This is insane. Insane was letting your daughter live under a bridge. Insane was stealing from your own mother. This was just good old-fashioned consequences. At 3 p.m., Derek showed up unannounced. Laura was with him this time, looking like she'd been crying. Good. Maybe she had a conscience, even if her husband didn't. "Mom, please," Derek started before he was fully through the door. "We can work something out. I don't have $135,000 just sitting around." "Then you should have thought of that before you became a thief," I replied, not looking up from the baby formula I was preparing for Emma. Laura stepped forward, her voice shaky. "Mrs. Henderson, Derek made mistakes, but prison won't solve anything. What about our kids? What about Derek Jr. and Sophie?" "Ah, the grandchildren card. I'd been wondering when that would come up." "What about them, Laura? They'll be devastated if their father goes to prison. Their lives will be ruined." I finished preparing Emma's bottle and turned to face them. "You know what ruins children's lives? Having a father who steals from family? Having a father who lies so easily that he convinces his own daughter her grandmother is dead." Laura flinched like I'd slapped her. Flapped. "We didn't know about Madison. Derek said she was fine, that she was in school." "Laura," my voice cut through her excuses. "You've been married to Derek for 15 years. Did you really not know what kind of man he is?" The truth was written all over her face. She'd known. Maybe not the specifics, but she'd known Derek was capable of this. People don't wake up one day and decide to commit fraud. They build up to it. Derek, sensing his wife was becoming a liability rather than an asset, jumped back in. "Look, I can get $50,000 by Friday. The rest will take time, but I can make payments." "No payments. Full amount by 5 p.m. today, or I make that call to Patricia Wells." "That's impossible." I shrugged. "Then you'd better start making some phone calls. Maybe your father-in-law would be interested to know how you've been managing family finances." Laura went white. "Derek, you didn't—" The look on Derek's face told me everything I needed to know. He'd been stealing from more than just me. Laura's family money was apparently also on the table. "How much?" Laura's voice was barely a whisper. Derek couldn't meet her eyes. "It was a loan. I was going to pay it back." "How much, Derek?" $40,000. Laura staggered like she'd been punched. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "So you've been stealing from both our families," I said conversationally. "How very efficient of you." At 4:47 p.m., my phone pinged with a bank alert. Wire transfer received, $135,000. I looked at the notification, then at Derek, who was slumped in my kitchen chair like a deflated balloon. Well, well, miracles do happen." "Are we done?" Derek asked, his voice hollow. "Oh, we're just getting started." I sat down across from him. "You're going to apologize to Madison. A real apology, not that pathetic excuse you tried yesterday. Then you're going to establish that education fund for Emma. Then you're going to get counseling because normal people don't do what you've done. And if I refuse?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. Patricia Wells was number 2 on my speed dial. "Try me." Derek looked at his wife, who was staring at him like she'd never seen him before. He looked at Madison, who was holding Emma and watching him with a mixture of pity and disgust. Finally, he looked at me. "I'm sorry," he said, and for the first time, he sounded like he meant it. "Not to me," I said quietly. "To her." As Derek turned to face his daughter, I felt something settle in my chest. Justice, maybe, or just the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the good guys actually win. But this story was far from over, because Wednesday night, I discovered something that would change everything I thought I knew about Derek's crimes. Wednesday night, after Derek and Laura left and Madison was giving Emma a bath, I decided to look through the paperwork more carefully. What I found in the insurance fraud documents made my blood run cold. The fake death certificate wasn't just hastily thrown together. It was professionally done, complete with forged medical records dating back 6 months, falsified doctor signatures, and a detailed medical history of a cancer I'd never had. This wasn't the work of an amateur. This was sophisticated, organized fraud. More disturbing was the timeline. According to the documents, Derek had started setting up this scheme 8 months before Madison's pregnancy. He'd been planning to steal from me long before his daughter needed help. Madison's situation had just been convenient cover. I called Patricia Wells at home. "Patricia, I need you to look at something. The fraud was more extensive than we thought." She arrived within an hour, took one look at the documents, and whistled low. "Betty, this is organized crime level stuff. Your son didn't do this alone." That's when my phone rang. The caller ID said, "Derek Jr., my 15-year-old grandson." "Grandma, is it true that Dad's been stealing money?" My heart sank. "Where did you hear that, honey?" "Mom's been crying all night. She told me and Sophie that Dad made some bad financial decisions. But I heard her on the phone with Grandpa Williams. She said Dad stole from both families." Poor kid. Derek Jr. was a good boy, nothing like his father. "It's complicated, sweetheart." "Grandma, there's something else. Dad's been meeting with some guy named Vincent for months. Mom doesn't know, but I saw them together at the coffee shop by my school. They were looking at papers and talking about accounts and stuff." Vincent. The name meant nothing to me, but Patricia was already taking notes. "What did this Vincent look like?" "Older guy, really expensive suit. Dad seemed nervous around him, like he was scared or something." After I hung up, Patricia was quiet for a long moment. "Betty, I think your son got in over his head with someone dangerous. This Vincent character might be the real mastermind." The pieces were falling into place in a way that made me feel sick. Derek wasn't just a greedy son who decided to steal from his mother. He was in debt to someone who'd helped him create professional-grade fraud documents, someone who probably expected to be paid back. "Patricia, if Derek gave me back $135,000, but he owes money to criminals, then you might all be in danger," she finished grimly. Thursday morning brought confirmation of my worst fears. Derek showed up at my door at 6 a.m., his face bruised and his left arm in a sling. "They know I paid you back," he said without preamble. "Vincent's people paid me a visit last night." Madison, holding Emma, stepped out of the kitchen. When she saw her father's condition, she gasped. "Dad, what happened to you?" "I got in debt with the wrong people. The fake death certificate, the account setup, it all cost money. Money I didn't have." Derek slumped against my doorframe. "I thought if I could just get access to Mom's accounts, I could pay them back and no one would get hurt." "How much do you owe them?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. $200,000, plus interest." The room went silent except for Emma's soft babbling. $200,000 to criminals who weren't afraid to beat up their debtors. "Derek," I said carefully, "exactly what kind of people are we dealing with here?" He looked up at me with eyes that reminded me of the scared little boy he'd once been. "The kind that don't accept excuses, Mom. The kind that hurt families to make their point." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Nice house, Betty. Pretty granddaughter, too. Tell Derek we'll be in touch." I showed the message to Patricia, who immediately started making calls. As she talked to the FBI about organized crime and witness protection, I looked at Madison and Emma, then at my bruised and terrified son. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about survival. And somewhere out there, Vincent and his people were planning their next move. Patricia returned from her phone calls with a grim expression. "The FBI is interested, but they need more than just Derek's word about Vincent. They need evidence, names, documentation." "What kind of evidence?" I asked, though I suspected I wouldn't like the answer. "The kind that puts you and your family at risk to obtain." She sat down heavily. "Betty, these people don't mess around. The threat about your granddaughter wasn't idle. They're sending a message." Derek, still holding his injured arm, spoke up. "Vincent has meetings every Thursday at the Harbor Club downtown. He conducts business in the back room. If someone could get close enough to record—" "Absolutely not," I said firmly. "I'm not putting anyone else in danger." "Mom, you don't understand. They won't stop until they get their money. If we can't pay them, they'll take it out on all of us." Derek's voice cracked. "They already know about Madison and Emma." That night, after we'd installed a security system and Patricia had arranged for police patrols, I lay awake thinking. Vincent had made one crucial mistake. He'd threatened my family. People who threaten my granddaughter quickly discover that 70-year-old grandmothers can be more dangerous than they appear. Friday morning, I made a decision that would have terrified the old Betty. I called Derek. Set up a meeting with Vincent. Tell him I want to negotiate. Mom, no, you can't. These aren't reasonable people. Derek, I've been handling unreasonable people since before you were born. The difference is, I've never had anything worth fighting for like I do now. The meeting was set for Saturday afternoon at the Harbor Club. As I prepared, Patricia tried one last time to talk me out of it. Betty, let the FBI handle this. Don't be a hero. I looked at her with the same expression I'd used on difficult clients for 40 years. Patricia, I'm not being a hero. I'm being a grandmother. The Harbor Club was exactly what I'd expected. Expensive, pretentious, and full of men who thought money made them untouchable. Vincent was waiting in the back room, a silver-haired man in his 60s who probably hadn't done an honest day's work in decades. Mrs. Henderson, he said, not bothering to stand. Derek's told me so much about you. I'm sure he has. I took the seat across from him, noting the two large men flanking his chair. Let's get to business, Vincent. What exactly do you want? He smiled, the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. $200,000. Plus $50,000 in interest for the inconvenience your son has caused. And in return, your family remains healthy and whole. The casual way he said it made my skin crawl, but I kept my voice steady. I have a counterproposal. Vincent raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. $100,000 paid today. In exchange, you forget Derek exists and never contact my family again. Vincent laughed. Actually laughed. Mrs. Henderson, I don't think you understand how this works. I'm not a bank. I don't negotiate payment plans. You're right. You're not a bank. I pulled out my phone and showed him the recording app that had been running since I walked in. You're a criminal, and I've been recording this entire conversation. The mood in the room shifted instantly. The two large men moved closer, but Vincent held up a hand. You're making a mistake, old woman. The only mistake I've made is waiting this long to deal with you. I stood up slowly. Here's what's going to happen, Vincent. You're going to take my offer of $100,000 and walk away. Because if you don't, this recording goes to the FBI, along with Derek's testimony about your operation. No one will believe a desperate old woman and her criminal son. I smiled then, the same smile I'd perfected during 40 years of dealing with difficult clients. Maybe not, but they'll certainly investigate. And I suspect a man in your position can't afford that kind of attention. The silence stretched between us like a wire. Finally, Vincent nodded slowly. $100,000. Today. Cash, I added. And a written agreement that you'll never contact my family again. You're playing a dangerous game, Mrs. Henderson. Vincent, I said as I gathered my purse. At my age, every day is a dangerous game. The difference is, I'm not afraid to lose anymore. 3 hours later, Vincent had his money, and I had his signature on a document that Patricia assured me would hold up in court. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Derek was waiting on my front porch when I arrived, his face a mixture of relief and disbelief. Mom, I can't believe you did that. You could have been killed. Derek, I've been dealing with bullies my entire life. Vincent was just better dressed than most. I unlocked my front door, suddenly feeling every one of my 70 years. Madison met us in the hallway, Emma in her arms. Is it over? It's over, I confirmed. Vincent got his money and agreed to leave us alone. That evening, as we sat around my kitchen table sharing takeout Chinese food, Derek cleared his throat. Mom, there's something I need to say. What I did to Madison, to you, to our whole family. There's no excuse for it. Madison looked up from feeding Emma. Dad, why did you really do it? And don't say it was to protect anyone. We're past that now. Derek was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, I was jealous. Jealous of how much money Mom had saved. Jealous that she seemed so content in retirement while I was struggling with mortgage payments and college funds. I convinced myself that she had more than she needed, that she wouldn't miss it. So you decided to kill me off and help yourself, I said dryly. When you put it like that, it sounds even worse. Derek managed a weak smile. Mom, I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to try to make things right. You already returned the money. Derek, and Vincent has been paid off. What more is there? I want to be a better father to Madison, a better grandfather to Emma, and maybe, if you'll let me, a better son to you. I looked at this broken man who had once been my little boy, then at Madison, who was watching her father with cautious hope, then at baby Emma, who was completely oblivious to the drama swirling around her. Derek, being better isn't about grand gestures or big promises. It's about showing up every day and doing the right thing, even when it's hard. I know, and I want to try. Madison reached across the table and took her father's hand. Dad, I'll give you a chance, but it has to be different this time. No more lies, no more secrets. No more lies, Derek agreed. As I watched my son and granddaughter tentatively rebuild their relationship, I felt a deep satisfaction. Vincent might have gotten his money, but I'd gotten something far more valuable, my family back. 2 months later, Derek had kept his word. He was in counseling, had found a second job to repay his in-laws, and was visiting Madison and Emma twice a week. Not perfect, but progress. The real surprise came when Madison announced she wanted to finish her nursing degree. Grandma, would you mind watching Emma while I take some online classes? I know it's a lot to ask. Madison, honey, there's nothing I'd love more. And I meant it. Having them in my house had filled a loneliness I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. That afternoon, while Madison studied and Emma napped, I found myself thinking about the past few months. The fear, the anger, the confrontation with Vincent, all of it had been terrifying. But it had also shown me something important about myself. I wasn't just a retired accountant waiting for life to happen to me. I was a woman with fight left in her, a woman who could face down criminals to protect her family. Vincent had threatened the wrong grandmother. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Mrs. Henderson, this is Agent Sarah Martinez with the FBI. We have some news about Vincent Carlisle. What kind of news? The recording you provided led to a much larger investigation. Mr. Carlisle was arrested this morning along with 12 associates. It turns out he's been running loan shark operations in 3 states. I sat down hard. Arrested? He's looking at federal charges for racketeering, money laundering, and extortion. Your testimony will be crucial to the case, but I wanted you to know, you helped take down a major criminal operation. After I hung up, I stared at the phone for a long moment. Little old me, Betty Henderson, had helped the FBI catch a career criminal. Who would have thought? That evening, Derek came for dinner, as had become our new tradition. When I told him about Vincent's arrest, his face went through several interesting color changes. Mom, what if he tries to retaliate from prison? What if his associates come after us? Derek, I said calmly, Vincent made his choice when he threatened Emma. Whatever happens next, we'll handle it as a family. Madison looked up from her textbook. Grandma's right, Dad. We stick together now. As I looked around my kitchen table at Derek helping Madison with her homework while Emma played in her high chair, I realized something profound had shifted. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were building something new, something stronger than what we'd had before. The old Betty might have been content to let Vincent disappear into the shadows, but this Betty, this grandmother who'd faced down criminals and won, wasn't about to let anyone threaten her family ever again. The trial was set for spring, but life didn't wait for justice to run its course. Madison finished her first semester with a 3.8 GPA. Emma took her first steps in my living room, and Derek slowly began earning back our trust. The biggest surprise came when Derek Jr. and Sophie asked to spend Christmas with us. Laura, devastated by Derek's lies but committed to keeping the family together, drove them over Christmas morning. Mom, Derek said as we watched the kids play with Emma, I know I don't deserve it, but thank you for not giving up on me. I looked at my son, really looked at him. The past 6 months had changed him. The arrogance was gone, replaced by humility. The entitlement had been burned away by consequences. What remained was closer to the boy I'd raised than the man I'd been dealing with for years. Derek, family doesn't give up. Family fights. Sometimes family fights each other, but we fight for each other too. That afternoon, Agent Martinez called with an update. Mrs. Henderson, Vincent Carlisle pleaded guilty to all charges. He'll be in federal prison for the next 20 years. He also provided information about his associates in exchange for protection. Your family is safe. Safe. After months of looking over our shoulders, of checking locks twice and jumping at unexpected sounds, we were finally safe. Spring brought Madison's graduation ceremony as I watched my granddaughter walk across the stage to receive her nursing degree, with Emma babbling happily in my arms and Derek beaming with pride beside me. I felt a profound sense of completion. The journey from that rainy day under the bridge to this moment had been harrowing, but it had also been transformative. Derek had learned that actions have consequences. Madison had discovered her own strength, and I had rediscovered mine. That evening, as we celebrated at my favorite restaurant, Madison raised her glass of water. To Grandma, who saved us all. To family, I corrected, who saves each other. Derek clinked his glass against mine. To second chances. To fresh starts, Madison added. As I looked around the table at my family, imperfect, complicated, but genuinely trying, I realized that sometimes the best stories aren't about perfect people making perfect choices. Sometimes the best stories are about broken people who refuse to stay broken. 6 months ago, Derek had tried to erase me from Madison's life by pretending I was dead. Today, I was more alive than I'd felt in years. I was a grandmother who'd faced down criminals, a mother who'd held her son accountable, and a woman who'd discovered that 70 years old was just the beginning of the next chapter. Vincent Carlisle had made one fatal mistake. He'd threatened my family, not realizing that grandmothers are the most dangerous creatures on earth when their grandchildren are at stake. I'd spent 70 years preparing for that moment. I just hadn't known it yet. Now, as Emma reached for my hand, and Madison talked excitedly about her new job at the Children's Hospital, I smiled. Life had tried to write me out of the story, but I'd grabbed the pen back, and this time, I was writing the ending myself. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.